Arav Mehra was a man the world admired and envied in equal measure. His name dominated business magazines, his face shone from billboards, and his wealth could silence almost any problem, except one. Every night, after the lights of the city dimmed and the applause of success faded into silence, Arav sat beside a wheelchair in a quiet room of his mansion. In that chair sat his mother, Kamla Mehra, her once strong legs now lifeless, her eyes carrying years of guilt she never spoke aloud. The room itself felt frozen in time, as if the moment of loss had permanently settled there. Soft lamps replaced the bright chandeliers of the rest of the house, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Medical files lay neatly stacked on a side table, reports from doctors in London, New York, Singapore, each one a silent reminder that money had limits. Arav would often glance at those files, not to read them, but to remind himself that he had tried everything. Or at least, everything money could buy. Kamla sat quietly most nights, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the window that overlooked the city skyline. From that window, she could see the same city where she had once walked freely, rushing home to cook for her son, worrying about his future, dreaming of his happiness. Now, she watched life move without her. Cars passed. Lights blinked. People lived. And she sat still, feeling like time had abandoned her. Arav never spoke much during those nights. Words felt unnecessary, even dangerous. He feared that if he spoke, his voice might crack and expose the guilt he carried like a second skin. He blamed himself for everything that had happened, though no one ever said it out loud. The accident had occurred years ago, but it replayed in his mind every single day, his phone buzzing with urgent emails, his mother asking him to slow down, his impatience, the screech of tires, the violent impact. He remembered waking up in the hospital and searching the room for her, only to find her lying still, her face pale, her eyes full of fear rather than pain. Doctors had told him it wasn't his fault. Friends had told him accidents happen. But no explanation could erase the truth his heart repeated endlessly. If he had slowed down, if he had listened, if he had waited just 5 more minutes, his mother would be walking today. That thought haunted him more than any failure ever could. In public, Arav Mehra was confidence personified. He spoke with authority, made decisions that affected thousands of employees, signed deals worth millions without hesitation. Investors trusted him. Media praised him. Strangers admired him. But in that quiet room, beside that wheelchair, he was just a son who felt he had failed the one person who mattered most. Kamla sensed his pain, even when he tried to hide it. Mothers always do. She saw how his shoulders stiffened whenever he entered the room, how his eyes avoided her legs, how he forced a smile that never reached his eyes. And that was where her guilt lived. Not in her body, but in her heart. She believed she had become a burden. She believed her condition had stolen her son's peace, his youth, his happiness. There were nights when Kamla wanted to speak, to tell him that she didn't blame him, that she loved him no matter what, that life had simply taken a cruel turn. But the words stayed trapped inside her. She feared that speaking would only deepen his wounds. Silence, she thought, was kinder. So she endured quietly, smiling faintly whenever he looked at her, pretending she was stronger than she felt. Arav would often recall his childhood during those silent hours. He remembered his mother waking before sunrise to prepare his school lunch, walking him to the bus stop even when it rained, standing proudly in the crowd. At every school function, she had been unstoppable then, full of energy, always moving, always caring. Seeing her confined to a wheelchair felt unnatural, like the world had broken its own rules. The mansion they lived in was vast, luxurious, and impeccably maintained, yet it never felt like a home to Arav anymore. Every corridor echoed with memories. Every expensive piece of furniture felt meaningless. He had bought the house after his first major success, dreaming of giving his mother a life of comfort. He never imagined that comfort would come at the cost of her freedom. Sometimes, late at night, when Kamla had fallen asleep in her chair, Arav would sit alone and allow his emotions to surface. He would clench his fists, his jaw tightening as tears burned his eyes. Crying felt like weakness to the world, but in that room, it felt like survival. He would silently promise her things, better doctors, better treatments, miracles yet to be discovered, even though deep down he knew he was promising himself more than her. Despite the army of staff in the mansion, Arav insisted on being present for his mother personally. He supervised her care, adjusted her blanket, ensured her medicine was taken on time. These small acts were his way of apologizing without words. It was the only language of regret he knew. Kamla noticed everything. She noticed how he aged faster than his years, how the spark in his eyes dimmed slowly over time. And that hurt her more than her immobility ever could. She wished she could stand up, not for herself, but to free her son from the invisible chains binding him to that moment in the past. Outside that room, life continued at an unforgiving pace. Arif's companies expanded. Awards lined his office shelves. Interviews painted him as a self-made success story, an inspiration to millions. But no article ever mentioned the quiet man who sat every night beside a wheelchair, silently asking fate for forgiveness. There were days when Arif wondered what success truly meant. He had chased wealth believing it would solve everything. And yet, here he was, richer than he had ever dreamed, and poorer than he had ever felt. The irony was bitter. Money could build skyscrapers, but it couldn't heal his mother's legs. It could buy the best care, but it couldn't erase guilt. Kamla, too, wrestled with her own thoughts during those nights. She remembered the accident differently, not with anger, but with sadness. She remembered seeing fear in her son's eyes when he realized what had happened. That look stayed with her. It convinced her that her role now was to be strong, to endure quietly, to protect him from further pain, even if it meant hiding her own suffering. So they sat together, night after night, bound by love and silence, each blaming themselves for the other's pain. The city lights outside flickered like distant stars, unaware of the emotional storm brewing within those walls. Neither of them knew that destiny had not finished its work yet. Neither of them knew that hope sometimes arrives not with noise or miracles, but quietly, through an unexpected voice and an impossible promise. And in that silence, in that room heavy with regret and unspoken love, two broken hearts waited, without knowing it, for a change that would challenge everything they believed about pain, healing, and forgiveness.